Hello, thanks for joining us. This is the What Now. We begin with developments at COP29. The federal government is actively pursuing international partnerships to explore the potential of clean nuclear power as part of its broader strategy to meet the country's growing energy demands. Minister of Environment Balarabe Lawal said this on the sidelines of the ongoing United Nations Climate Change Conference in Azerbaijan. Esther Mokbariola has the details.
It's the second week of high-level discussions at the United Nations Climate Change Conference in Azerbaijan, where countries are securing crucial deals to advance global climate action. Delegates from around the world are working to keep the ambitious goal of limiting global temperature rise to 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach. Nigerian representatives at this year's summit say the country is ramping up its efforts to combat climate change. They are focusing on cutting greenhouse gas emissions and investing in renewable energy alongside other eco-friendly initiatives.
And part of what we are discussing is now, how do we now harness clean nuclear power? Clean nuclear power. So we have been able to sit down with them. We've got some commitments from them. They are in Thailand, they are in Ghana, but I think they promised to get to Nigeria. Not only are we talking about there are certain stimulators that they are going to bring, but to teach us how we can do that.
With nearly 70% of Nigerians relying on off-grid solutions for their energy needs, the government plans to harness renewable resources to boost power generation to 30 megawatts by 2030.
Over 32 states in Nigeria have nothing less than 8 to 10 hours of sunlight on a daily basis. So what excuse do we have not to exploit solar energy as renewable energy? And with the really this problem we're having with the grid, we believe we need to decentralize our power generation across all the subnationals so that each of the states can have embedded power plants in their own states.
As the summit continues, Nigeria is positioning itself to take bold steps in both reducing emissions and meeting its energy needs with a cleaner and more sustainable approach. Esther Mokbariola, TVC News, Azerbaijan.
For more on this development, founder of International Climate Change Development Initiative, Olumide Ido, joins me on the news. Good to have you join us.
Thank you very much for having me.
So I know that there is a lot of conversation on transiting to renewable energy. There is another conversation on climate financing. But I wanted us to start from, what this is all about in the first place, which is climate change. And what has this, and, as you monitored the summit, what have you learned in terms of how the world is doing on tackling climate change?
Yeah, thank you very much. Let me first of all say that COP29 we see this year is critically looking at the issue of climate finance. And they are also focusing on how we can actually make financial mechanism work for developing countries. And this financial mechanism needs to tackle issues that is affecting developing countries. But the bottom line here is, how do we make sure that this financial mechanism and these financial sources is actually getting to the right people? And that's why you see that as a country, Nigeria, Article 6 and the CDM was very, very prominent for us. And if that conversation is going the way it's supposed to go, then we'll be able to see that the Santiago network for loss and damage will actually meet the need of the country. So, but I will say that the issue here is that a lot of, like, Argentina have withdrawn their the delegation negotiators, and a lot of other countries are also looking at how do they, go with this conversation that is going on. The issue of adaptation and NAPS is something that is critical. The issue of response mechanism is something that is very, very big in the even mitigation work program and the NDCs. Because by this time next year, we are talking about the NDC 3.0. But for Nigeria, I think it is very, very paramount that we start looking at our work programs on just transition pathways. Because our just transition pathways also speaks to the the issue of moving from fossil fuel to renewable energy. But for the progress of the conference and moving to the second week, I think it has been a conversation on the Article 6, because Article 6 laid foundation of what the developing country want to see effect and change on. Thank you.
And because you mentioned Nigerians, we understand that the African group of negotiators, which is made up of a negotiator from every country representing Africa, they are demanding now for $1 trillion per annum from 2026 to 2030, we understand, and that's to finance climate-related developments across Africa. I mean, that seems like a really tall order. Some people would say, look, the priority should be ensuring that for monies that have been pledged initially, there's accountability in terms of payment and maybe not necessarily increase. What's your thought on that?
I think we are not asking for too much because you see the African Development Bank, which actually estimated the African needs between the 1.3 trillion and 1.6 trillion in total for climate finance every year between 2020 to 2030, actually did the research to understand that there's a problem. And this funding will actually enable African countries to actually meet their commitments in order for them to reduce the greenhouse gas emission, which is also known as the National Determined Contribution. But I will say that the African group of negotiators have been able to do their inward research, internal research, to be able to understand that there's a lot of adaptation measure that is needed for countries. And for Nigeria, our NDC is also very powerful because the focus of our NDC on certain MDAs, which is the transportation, agriculture, power, and all other MDAs that is on the NDC, actually we
seem to be in network.
They're actually speaking to the right needs of the people that are the receiving them, which is the developing country. So I think it's in the right direction, and we need to just start looking at how we can build an action for climate empowerment for the people.
And I have two questions in one. I think it is because both of them seem to focus on Nigeria. We understand that those who are affected by the oil extraction in Nigeria, the Ilaje community and then the Ishakiri and Ijaw community in the Niger Delta area are asking for reparations. And people will say, look, that's not so much to ask. I want to find out how that conversation is progressing. But I also want to ask you what you think Nigeria should be taking away from this summit.
Yeah, personally, for me, I think from here, in as much as we are signing agreements, we are signing funding partnership or financial partnership, we should understand that every bit of a negotiation track needs to be followed up. Is it the technological matter and the IPCC? Is it the adaptation and the NAPS? Is it the response measure? Is it the gender and climate change? Is it the issue of mitigation work program and the NDCs? Is it the Paris commitment on the capacity building, which is the PCCP? Is it even the issue of global stock take? So we need to start looking at what is going to be the aftermath in measuring the progress of these conversations so that what we are here for will be able to relate to the needs of the people in the community. And we cannot start talking about the transparency and accountability of every agreement, every funding mechanism, and every partnership that we've seen across the conversation and the negotiation track Nigeria is talking about. So I think the point here is our Article 6 to speak to local actions, to speak to innovation that is happening on ground. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your time. Pleasure to have you on. The founder of International Climate Change Development Initiative, Olumidedo.